Hi, everybody. I'm Vanessa Rose, President and CEO of the American Composers Forum.
And my name is Garrett McQueen. I chair the Equity Committee on the board for ACF.
We're really pleased to welcome you to our Artist Equity Summit. This is our third Artist Equity Summit for ACF, and the theme, as you can see, is follow through. This is taking place today, September 10th, and tomorrow, September 11th, and we're very happy to welcome you here. As I mentioned, I'm the President and CEO of American Composers Forum, and we're going to go to the next slide and acknowledge the ACF honors and acknowledges the Anishinaabe and Dakota people, the ancestral caretakers of this land that ACF calls home. We take this time to consider the acts of violence, displacement, and unjust treatment toward them that have occurred over many generations. We offer our respect and gratitude to the elders of the past, to those living today, and to those who will come in the future, for their careful stewardship of this land and its resources, and for the rich cultural legacy they will continue to create here.
It's not just land acknowledgement that ACF affirms, but going beyond the acknowledgement. This concept is going to be explored a little further during this weekend summit, but we wanted to highlight a few resources for you here so that you can continue to think about what it means to go beyond just the acknowledgement. In addition to the links posted here, I encourage everyone to do what you can when it comes to stopping Line 3. Line 3, if you don't know, is a proposed pipeline expansion to bring nearly 1 million barrels of tar sands per day from Alberta, Canada to Superior, Wisconsin. It was proposed in 2014 by Enbridge, which is a Canadian pipeline company responsible for the largest inland oil spill in the United States. Enbridge seeks to build a new pipeline corridor through untouched wetlands and the treaty territory of the Anishinaabe peoples through the Mississippi River headwaters to the shore of Lake Superior. For more information and to find more ways to support, visit stopline3.org.
We also want to thank our donors and funders to ACF, in particular, the support of the City of St. Paul STAR program, and that this activity is made possible by the voters of Minnesota through a Minnesota State Arts Board Operating Support Grant, thanks to a legislative appropriation from the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. Thank you to those funders. I also want to thank the steering committee for this event. That includes Lady Midnight, Lee Bynum, Tori Allen, myself, Sun Young Shin, Kate Bean, and Damian Strange. Thanks to their help in planning this entire event today and tomorrow. So just to walk you through a little bit of what to expect over today and tomorrow, this is our schedule. You can find the full schedule on our website, which is here, composersforum.org. Just click on the Artist Equity Summit. We are here welcoming you, and we will be shortly giving our own report on ACF's equity work and our progress towards our commitment and the things that we've learned and maybe could do better. Then we'll be moving into our first panel, which is labels and language. What does your commitment actually mean? Tonight, for those that are here in Minnesota, sorry for those that are not, we will have an in-person concert featuring some of our Minnesota-based artists in downtown St. Paul. And then tomorrow, Saturday, September 11th, starting at 8:45 Central, we will enjoy a performance by the Yala Drum Ensemble. And then we will be moving into our second panel, which is follow through, moving through the backlash. We will have a land acknowledgement and music presentation by the artist Jada Brown. And our last panel will be what we learn from Indigenous cultures, ending at 1 p.m. Central. I want to thank the Claim Our Space team who has produced this event, and also mention that our Saturday activities will be streamed live from the St. Paul Neighborhood Network station. So thanks to those partners as well.
So we're going to continue by talking a little bit about what we believe and what we do. We believe that we can all discover new perspectives and connect as humans through music. It's easy to think about music and the creation of music as a means toward entertainment, which is important, it has its place, but it's also a means toward understanding and engaging with each other's experiences. ACF works to help artists feel the impact of this belief by creating and maintaining spaces that allow artists to express their whole authentic selves. We also strive to help audiences and supporters feel this belief through our many public and outward-facing programs and events. ACF believes that today's music creators provide art that is both vital and relevant to our daily lives. As folks trained in the Western classical tradition of music can attest, myself included, a focus on composers who are long gone has for too long been central to the way we think about the creation of music. Affirming living creators, again, today's creators, helps us realize our bigger goals. And ACF believes that racial equity is a priority that frames our work. Now, this is more than just a belief. It's actions and daily work that require intense, sometimes uncomfortable conversations that lead to better understanding and a renewed relationship among community members.
Thank you. And just going back to that previous slide, I'm going to talk a bit about what we do. Those are our values. Those are the things that we believe here at ACF. What that looks like in our programs are that we invite creators to belong to a go-to space where they can find support and connect. That's our resources, our services, our help desk that we launched this year. We amplify the stories of artists and their music through media, recordings, gatherings, and leadership. This is a gathering as an example. We also have the record label Innova Recordings, almost 40 years since we started that. And we recently acquired icareifyoulisten.com, the multimedia hub, as examples of how we do this. We activate opportunities and engage collaborators, communities, and curious listeners with creators and the music of our time. We not only support the artists, we advocate on their behalf, whether that's through panel conversations, conferences, various roundtables and things like that, so that we can ensure, just like we're doing today, that not only are you connecting with the artists, that you will engage with them and you will find equitable ways to continue to support, listen, and be a part of this music creator community. So we're going to move on to our report on our commitment to equity. Just to say a little bit about my role in this, as the CEO and president of American Composers Forum, I really see what we just shared with you, our slide about what we value and what we do, as my role to be able to ensure that those take place, that they are cultivated and implemented on a daily basis and a strategic basis as well. I also think it is my role to be relevant to the people that we serve. It is not enough to just say we're going to do something and operate in a vacuum. It's incredibly important that we are relevant and continue to be evolving to ensure that we remain so. And it's also my responsibility to make sure that we function ethically, responsibly, and effectively, and ensure that these priorities are constantly at the top of what we do, that equity remains a priority throughout the organization in every aspect of what we do.
So for me, as an arts activist and a media creator, all of my energy goes into transforming art spaces into decolonizing classical music. And I consider being the chair of the ACF Equity Committee a really important part of the work I do week to week. As Equity Committee chair, it's my responsibility to help oversee ACF's programs and policies as a means of holding the organization accountable while working to offer more visibility to the blind spots and biases we all hold, those intentional biases and especially those unintentional biases. Equity, at the end of the day, is all about outcomes. So to that, myself, the Equity Committee, and the entire board and staff of ACF are held at a high standard, making sure that we offer pathways and resources to as many individuals as possible in the most equitable ways we can.
Thank you. So there's, again, entire commitment to equity available on our website. There is the link here on the slide to see it directly. So this is just a component of that full statement, which also includes a glossary, which I think is important to add. So the commitment summary right here, I'll read aloud. ACF's commitment to being a racially equitable organization guides us and our work. We are committed to centering BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color narrative, and as such have outlined goals for achieving a majority BIPOC or 60% representation throughout the organization by our 50th anniversary in 2025. These goals are integrated into our current 5-year strategic plan. We seek to include within the racial equity frame additional inequities such as diverse gender identities, musical approaches and perspectives, ages, disabilities, cultures, religions, backgrounds, sexual orientations, and broad definitions of being American. Our work succeeds with trust and participation from the artists we support and connection to the ecosystem that presents, performs, and receives their music. When space is created for more people to belong, it benefits not only the artists and our networks, but also the world. So we want to take a moment to talk a little bit about this statement. One thing that probably sticks out to a lot of people is the 60%.
Yeah.
Do you want to speak to that, Garrett?
Sure. Yeah. We're often asked, where did this 60% number come from? How was it determined? Well, in forming our commitment to equity statement, it was my belief that true dedication, again, commitment, as the title of the document states, is not only including diverse voices, but centering those diverse voices. Additionally, census data has confirmed that people of color will likely be the majority population here in the United States by the year 2045. As of December 2020, as a matter of fact, white people made up 60% of the US population. And as minority communities continue to grow, ACF must prepare to be able to engage as many of these growing communities as possible, starting with, but not limited to, the way we engage hiring, funding, and support.
I also wanted to note this bolded section about trust and participation, which will be part of the panel following this discussion as well. And that is, again, a daily act. It is a daily effort, and it's part of the training that we continue to do as well. We'll talk about that a little bit more. And I just wanted to make one final comment, which is that this is integrated in our strategic plan. This is not initiative. This is not short term. This is not a side project by a few people. This is embedded throughout the organization and committed to by full staff, board, and our partner participation. So we're going to move to the next slide. And at some point, there we go. Just a few points about our philosophy, just so you know how we're approaching this. We honor people's self-described identities, including how they identify as an artist and how they identify their music. Something that has come out of many conversations related to this work is the word composer, for example. Composer obviously is part of our name, is part of our history, and is still very much a term that we use, but it's not a term that everybody identifies with or seeks to use as a means to identify themselves as an artist. That's something we really want to honor and welcome.
We use the term anti-racist to best illustrate our active commitment to learning, listening, and engaging in behavior and actions that eliminate racism. Not being racist or saying that we're unracist maybe isn't enough. Using the term anti-racism and anti-racist forces us to take an active, intentional approach to this work as it applies to ACF.
Our hope is to make the circle bigger, for more people to belong to our community. It is not an either or, but a yes and. So if you're hearing 60% and you feel like, well, that means that we're going to exclude a lot of people, no, our hope is that we're making it bigger. It only means that we're hoping that 60% will be, as Garrett said, the diverse population that has been historically excluded.
There is no right way. We engage in multiple approaches toward our goal of engaging as many people as possible, our very diverse community of artists and supporters. We have to keep that in mind when we're talking about ways moving forward. So we engage in as many approaches as possible toward our equity goals.
Alex Pate's Engaging the Good introduces individuals to an anti-racist relationship building process at the micro level that allows for an authentic and actionable pathway towards racial equity for every individual. And you're going to hear a little bit more about that in the next panel as well. Engaging the Good is, again, a philosophy that we've applied to this work and the training that we're doing currently with Alex Pace's organization. Julie and Connie will be speaking to that in the next panel. So our actions, we wanted to show you that it's not just language and a commitment, that we are acting, and this is a 5-year plan. So these are the actions in the first of the 5 years. I'm not going to read the full list in the interest of time, but I welcome you to read the statement again and also look for a full report card that we'll be issuing later this month. This year, we've discontinued ACF's longstanding membership program. It means that all of our resources are available to everyone. It's not just because a financial burden might have been part of the reason some people did not participate. It also excluded people. It also had a perceptual barrier to people participating. We wanted to make sure that more people were seeing it as a resource for them and engaged with us.
Yep. A word that's been floating around arts communities and communities in general lately is gatekeeping or gatekeeper. So while requiring membership has been a viable option for many years, ACF believes that eliminating all barriers, or at least as many barriers as we possibly can, is key in meeting our goals and our mission including the elimination of our membership model. This has in turn resulted in far more diverse engagement from the people who apply to our programs and resources, all the way to those who end up being awarded.
Thank you. We've also really changed the way that we put together our panels. And one of the things that we've added is an interview process. We're actually calling it a curatorial panel, not just a panel process, because we really see each individual that helps to make these decisions for ACF's awards as curators. And we take great care to ensure, as much as is possible, that there's diversity from many different perspectives making those decisions for us.
We take our outward facing work very seriously. Authentically and equitably engaging our community of artists is vital. So we make sure that everyone who enters our space to present, whether it's a physical space or a virtual space like this one, understand our commitment to equity and our goal of affirming all musical artists, no matter how they arrive in our spaces.
And another change that we've made this past year was piloting a new model for the Innova record label. You'll be seeing more of this soon. We're going to be extending this nationally. We did this initially in the Bay Area.
Yeah, Innova is not only a huge resource for artists and their creations, but an example to the rest of the field as to how possible it actually is to be a record label that offers support and autonomy to its artists.
Thank you. Moving forward, these are some of our recent awardees. Again, as a result of some of our changes internally, we're very excited to support these artists. And next, we have for more of our actions in terms of advocacy. I mentioned I Care If You Listen. We're very proud to have recently acquired that hub last September. And as a result of the partnership, we can now support equitably paying not only a full-time staff member, but also 29 diverse contributors and many guest contributors in addition to them.
Yeah, one thing that I'll speak to personally when it comes to I Care If You Listen is the nuance that goes into exploring these many different stories and aspects of our work. I've personally enjoyed the data-centered work that I've been seeing lately from I Care If You Listen. So a great acquisition by ACF.
Yeah, the people writing about music is just as important as the subject.
Yeah.
We also have presented thematic series together with I Care If You Listen. These are just a few of them out of context, which focus on cultural appropriation, uneven measures, which we timed last year with the centennial of the 19th Amendment. So we talked about women's suffrage and voting rights leading into the presidential election. Casting Light is our current one underway, and that focuses on less visible issues with equity, like mental health and wealth disparity.
Yeah, and these are just a few examples of the thematic series programs that we offer. There's conversations that are happening in all corners of this work, and highlighting as many of them as we can helps us reach our goals as well.
Through the ACF Connect program, we've partnered with the Association for the Advancement of Creative Musicians, or the AACM, and their Great Black Music Ensemble. We'll be performing actually October 30th, the premieres through the program in Chicago, as well as Music of the Unsung America in Miami.
Yeah, in a world that's continually physically distanced as much as is safe, it's really important for us to create and maintain relationships with other organizations, and being able to continue in that work specifically of collaboration helps us maintain a sense of community in an otherwise separated world.
Absolutely. So we just have a little photo shot here of our many contributors for I Care If You Listen. Very pleased to have them on the team. And our last slide with our actions, internal changes that you might not have seen. We mentioned the equity committee that you were chairing.
Yeah,
happily.
Yeah, I spoke a little bit about the equity committee's role a little earlier, but I'll say again, we're here to make sure that all of our programs and practices are as equitable as possible. Each meeting starts with a presentation, usually a celebration of culture as it applies to heritage months and different seasons, just to make sure we're thinking about different communities from an equity lens while acknowledging our privileges and shortcomings in those conversations. I particularly enjoyed covering Left Hand Awareness Month. It's something that we don't always think about, but just one example of one of the privileges that we can always acknowledge, especially as music creators. And
what you don't know is that Garrett creates a presentation for each meeting. I'm sorry that only we get to see it. It's really wonderful. We also, I mentioned this briefly, have entered into a year-long partnership with Innocent Technologies. That's Alex Pace's organization. Again, Julian Condi will be sharing more about those philosophies and the work that we're doing together in the next panel. Do you want to say anything more?
Sure. Yeah, our partnership with Innocent Technologies has been very impactful, even a bit challenging, if I may say at times. But we're used to describing change as uncomfortable. But as a board specifically, I think we're still working on being comfortable with that discomfort. So as we explore renewed definitions of innocence, guilt, and the good, we're learning more about each other and engaging in anti-racism at the molecular level, as the creator of the training says.
Absolutely. We've also revised our employee policies. Seems like kind of an obvious thing, but also often overlooked. And we really invested quite a lot of time with nonprofit HR to make sure that that was more reflective of the equitable culture that we seek to cultivate here. Yeah,
we're living in a world filled with more uncertainty. I know we've been saying that for working on 2 years now, but it's the truth. So to help ACF staff traverse our various ecosystems, ACF has made it easier to work remotely, to take time off as needed, and to engage health and personal needs in a way that creates a culture of trust. We can only give what we have when it comes to this work. And personally, I believe that ACF staff is stronger when times of rest are prioritized alongside times of work.
Definitely. Time is a great commodity too. We have revamped our hiring process and practices. I'm happy to report that we have hired quite a few amazing team members recently. And some of that included more transparency in our description. We were very clear about our anti-racist work and needing that to be a shared value and priority. And we also were very clear about salary, about what we were looking for in the cover letter, things like that as part of the process.
As we sort of touched on a little earlier in this presentation, hiring practices have been shifted to center equity to make sure that we have the most diverse candidates to fill our positions. One example of how that's been applied is they're removing certain ambiguities in the hiring practices, namely asking directed questions in application materials instead of leaving a blank for things like cover letters, which have been proven to be intrinsic barriers of entry.
And there were really interesting cover letters as a result.
Yeah.
And just one more point we wanted to share here and highlight is that we recently transferred our investments to a firm that prioritizes diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. And we really made that one of our major factors as we transferred our endowment. Yeah, money is always a conversation, and I'm very proud that equity is a part of the money conversation here at ACF. By transferring investments to firms that prioritize DEIA, staff members, the board, and our entire community can rest assured that our funds will never support inequitable practices in other parts of our ecosystem. So our next slide, outcomes. Applications from artists. So an increase in the number of applicants, 22% increase for McKnight fellowships, a 130% increase for McKnight visiting awards, a 29% increase for ACF Create, and a 100% increase for Minnesota music creators. That 130% increase is particularly exciting. BIPOC identified applicants, 53% on average for all 4 programs that I mentioned. This does not include individuals who opted out of those questions. And I think that's a really important point for us to talk about just briefly. Self-identification is so important. And if people choose not to self-identify through our equitable lens, we consider that completely fine. We've revamped the demographics form and explanation, encouraged 12% more applicants than last year to share their information. As far as ACF staff, 25% identify as BIPOC from just 9% last year. 50% identify as women and 10% as gender non-conforming. 16% identify as BIPOC women, which is very exciting. For the board, 44% of us identify as BIPOC. That's an increase from last year's 43%, and over 2,000 views to date of ACF's commitment to equity on the website have been tabulated. That's a lot of people, 2,000. Yeah. It's worth noting too, we didn't actually add anybody in the board this year. So so that's the percentage. Great. So we do want to acknowledge there are areas where we can absolutely improve. Land acknowledgements. We shared this land acknowledgement earlier today. It is not something we have done consistently. We also want to do more beyond the land acknowledgement, just as we talked about earlier, as an organization, and of course, each of us personally. Accessibility is something we want to make sure we're more consistent and more knowledgeable about. Gender identities is an area we want to explore more and understand better and be more inclusive of. Data systems, we talked about data. I mean, the metrics that we just shared with you now, there are a lot of questions we still have about consistency, about how we're asking the questions, about how we're analyzing those data systems, and also just capturing more so that we really understand how we're doing and can measure ourselves and compare our progress. And I just, sorry, do you want to say?
Oh, no.
Okay, and just last thing, just deeper connections. We're still building our network. We're still reaching out. We're still building that trust with people who have perhaps felt excluded or didn't know about ACF or didn't want to participate in ACF before. So that's something we absolutely want to be intentional and continue to work towards.
We've also learned, Anat, organizational culture changes slowly. We acknowledge the nature of change, but we also remain focused with timelines, with deadlines, and measurable goals that ensure the long game isn't actually the forever game. I really love that we have that timeline, that 50-year anniversary to work towards, to make sure we're staying focused. Being vulnerable with people you work with or are on a board with, and in my case, is very complicated, certainly at times. Vulnerability is complicated, but building rapport through our training and through our daily practices provides a pathway toward more honest conversation and more expedient outcomes. Guilt is a tremendous barrier. We all want to see and think of ourselves as good people, but sometimes we just fall short. That feeling of guilt can be overwhelming sometimes, but we acknowledge each other's imperfections and affirm our collective journey toward racial equity through engagement that diminishes guilt, establishing our own innocence and engaging the good, as we've been exploring in our equity training sessions. And then finally, self-awareness is essential. In practicing self-awareness, ACF practices accountability. We hope that the information we've provided for you today gives you an idea of where we feel like we're doing great, where we feel like we can improve, and how the relationship between those two things will help us continue to realize our mission to support and advocate for individuals and groups creating music today by demonstrating the vitality and relevance of their art.
Absolutely. I want to thank you, Garrett, for doing this work with us, for your amazing commitment. I want to thank our equity committee, our board, our staff, and the many people who help us do this. This is not something any one organization can do or any one person. So we really appreciate all of you in our community. Hold us accountable, ask questions, give us feedback. It's really important that, as we said earlier, that we remain relevant and a vital organization to you. Thank you. I'm going to move us to our next panel. Very excited to introduce Lee Bynum, the Vice President for Impact, Minnesota Opera, and as part of our steering committee to set up our next panel.